We're just gonna take my heat gun on the lowest setting and I'm just gonna move it all around quickly here. Hey everyone, Uncle Jesse here. Today we're gonna be doing something I haven't done in quite a while, and that's a print and paint project. And we're not gonna be printing and painting just anything. We're gonna be 3D printing a Kirby eating a Batmobile, or consuming it and taking control of the Batmobile. And if you're already aware, there's a new game out called Kirby and the Forgotten Land that my 6-year-old is absolutely obsessed with. And in the game, Kirby can take control of different objects, and Raven Eye 3D has created a model of Kirby taking control of a Batmobile. And we're gonna be printing that here on the Elegoo Mars 3, but I need some pink resin. And as far as I'm aware, there's no pink resin available anywhere. So what I'm gonna be doing is using some white Elegoo resin and mixing in some peach alcohol ink. And how much of this am I gonna be using? I have no idea. It's gonna be a little bit of an experiment to see until we get a vibrant pink. That took a good amount of alcohol ink, but I think we've got a great looking pink that somewhat matches the tone of Kirby, so let's get it loaded up in the Mars 3 and get this print going. And our Kirby print finished, and it took almost 7 hours to 3D print here on the Elegoo Mars, and it looks fantastic. The color combination there that I went with to get this, I think, is a nice vibrant pink that relatively matches up to what Kirby looks like in those games and any of the promo art. Very, very excited to get this cleaned up and painted. My son is absolutely gonna love this. And after flexing the print off of the build plate, it's time to get the print cleaned up in a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. And for this, I'm gonna be using the Elegoo Wash and Cure Station. And after letting it run in the IPA for about 3 minutes, our print is nice and clean and ready to have those supports removed. And to do that, I'm gonna be using the heat gun trick again that I was showing off just recently here. So here, we're just gonna take my heat gun on the lowest setting and I'm just gonna move it all around quickly here. I don't know how, but I didn't break the print after I just dropped it and it fell on the ground here. Some good durable resin there. Yep. Ooh, nice. And I used some heavier supports for this because I did not, oh my gosh, those don't want to come out. And my least favorite part of resin 3D printing is trying to fish out supports from the bottom side or your hollowed areas of the print. And now that all the prints are clean, cured, and dried, before I can start the painting process, I want to make sure I got a nice little protective layer over the pink topping here because I don't want this to scratch. With resin 3D prints, even with your fingernail, if you go over a raw finished 3D print, you can scratch it and provide a little bit of chalkiness to it. And I don't want that to happen on these after I painted them. So what I'm gonna do is apply a little bit of this matte clear coat to the prints, let those dry, and then I can start the process of painting directly over them. And this is one of the big reasons why I love resin 3D printing. I'm not gonna be sanding this at all. And yeah, there's some little divot marks on the back where I removed the supports, but no one's gonna see that or care. I ended up applying 3 rounds of the matte clear coat to the prints, and I think they look really good. And it's now ready to print, but I wanted to mask everything off so I could paint the underside of the car. And unfortunately, I bought some of this masking liquid that I was really excited to try out. And yeah, after opening it, it was brand new, haven't used it. It's just one big rubbery piece of liquid. You can't actually use this. So I'm just gonna have to rely on a little bit of frog tape and tape off the areas so that I can get everything painted. I didn't let it dry long enough. I'm getting everything all dirty. Well, I massively screwed this one up. The black paint, the airbrush paint, wasn't completely dry when I started removing the tape and got black ink all over Kirby, our nice clean finish. And I tried wiping it down with some water and it wasn't coming up. So I'm gonna try something really stupid since I've put a few coats of clear coat on here. I'm gonna put a little isopropyl alcohol and see how badly we mess this up. So it's not perfect, but it's definitely a lot better than it was before. Just to touch up some of the areas that I screwed up, I'm using the exact same airbrush ink there and just using a brush to lightly go over those areas just to cover anything back up that I might have peeled away while removing the tape. And then using a hairdryer or my heat gun to help dry up that paint that I just applied. Now we can move on to the fun part, which is painting all of the details on our Kirby Batmobile. So I have a variety of different paints here, some Citadel paints that I'm gonna be using. I also have some testers paints that I've picked up that I have not used previously, as well as just some really cheapo apple barrel paint that I picked up from Walmart. So I think I'm gonna use this Dragonstone Citadel paint for the wheels. And I'm basically just dry brushing that on, and what that means is I've got some paint on my brush, and then I dry off most of it onto a piece of paper towel or something that I can just rub off most of it, and then I'm just going over and over and over it until it starts to lightly color the part that we're trying to paint. I'm also gonna try mixing in this lighter shade as well, just to give it a little bit of highlighting. Now I'm also gonna try and add a little bit of highlighting to all of the motors and gears on the bottom side of the Batmobile. And for that, I'm gonna be using some of this iron breaker. I don't know, it kind of looks silvery and metallic. I'm also gonna try adding just the tiniest bit of silver leaf rub and buff. For Kirby's feet, I think I'm just gonna use this Apple Barrel Red. That's really cheap paint that you can grab from Walmart. I also don't have plates or anything for me to put this on, so I'm just using paper towels, which is probably not the best idea in the world. So here's the unfinished foot, and then after 3 or 4 very light coats of red paint, here is the other foot. And I think it looks pretty good, other than a few little areas there that I just overpainted and I might try and touch up. And after a few minutes, we've got our 2 red feet. Now it's time to move on to the face. All right, we're gonna test something out here, and I honestly don't know if this is gonna work or not, but just to touch up those areas, I'm gonna try and paint back on the resin and just use the UV pen to cure it and see if it'll cover it up. I don't know, maybe I'll take a few coats, but I figured it'd be better than me trying to match the paint and paint it. I really had to gloop it on to get it to be thick enough for it to actually cover the red. Not exactly great, but I think it'll do. Time to very carefully try to paint the cheeks of our little Kirby friend here. And I'm gonna be using this Tester's Red, but there's some really dried up pink here on the side that I'm gonna be working with. Not too bad. Time for the eyes. I think for the eyes, we're gonna start with this matte black from Tester's and see how that goes. I think I just held my breath the entire time painting that. So I got both eyes painted black, and I know Kirby has a little tint of blue in there, so I'm gonna try and use this ultramarine blue from Folk Art. Again, another really cheap acrylic paint, and very, very carefully paint that in on the bottom of the eyes. And I just need the tiniest amount of blue for the bottom portion of the eyes. So we'll see how cleanly I can get this painted on here. See how well that's gonna show up, but I was able to get some of the blue on there, and now we just need to paint in the white of the pupils. And we'll just be using some of this white Tester's paint that I picked up. Again, just a tiny amount should be enough for this. And with that tiny dab of white, I think the eyes are done. And our Kirby Batmobile is done. This was a crazy, fun, one-day project for me to run off and do. I was able to get everything printed, painted here, all in one day, which is fantastic for anybody out there that's looking for a really fun project, maybe for their kids or for themselves. And if you're interested in downloading and 3D printing one of these for yourself, I've linked over to Cults 3D, where you can check out Raven Eye 3D's files, where I ended up picking this up from. And it was based off of a sketch that was created by Rariatoo. I did also want to take a moment to say thank you to today's video sponsor, which is none other than Elgu, the makers of the Elgu Mars 3 that I used in today's video, along with their Elgu white resin. I was able to mix in some alcohol ink to create this vibrant pink resin that worked flawlessly here on the Mars 3. I then went off and cleaned it in the Elgu wash and cure station. If you are interested in any of Elgu's products that I've shown off in today's video, you can find links to those down below. I love working with the Mars 3, and it's easily my favorite resin 3D printer that I have on hand today. It's the perfect combination of build volume, print speed, and print quality. And I've got a question for all of you out there. Let me know down below what you think Kirby would look like in real life. Would he be shiny or sort of like a flat surface like I painted here? Because I went with the matte finish on this instead of a glossy, and I was chatting with Andrew Sink, and he thought it would be more of a shiny balloon-like surface if Kirby was real. Let me know down below what you think. I also want to say a big thank you to all my Patreon supporters for your continued support. If you're interested in my resin 3D printer settings, including the settings that I used for my Elegoo Mars 3, I have those listed over in my Patreon. You'll definitely see more printing and painting projects for me here in the upcoming future. I have this beautiful space that I can now freely paint things and not have to worry about my wife or family complaining about fumes from spray painting or anything like that, now that I have an outside dedicated space that I can actually use for this. And maybe in the future, I'll do a spray paint booth build. And I gotta get home and give this to my kid already. Hey, thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye now. What's that?
A car with Kirby.
A car with Kirby? Is that a Batman car? A Batmobile with Kirby?
Yeah.
It's got a hole in it. Is that pretty cool?